working out some kinks yet. All right. Well, anyways, here we go. Yeah. So, my name's Steve Winz. I'm a locally elected official here in Lisle, and part of what I'm trying to do is introduce myself to some people around the community that may not know a lot about me. I get accused sometimes of being too union or something to that effect, and I'd like to share with people how I actually became union. I was a non-union worker for several years, five or I suppose, and I made a conscious choice to become a union member because it seemed beneficial to me. But so a little background. I don't know. I'll try to keep this to 30 minutes. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm sitting at home and I'm still participating in the stay-at-home orders. So I figured this is a good opportunity for me to share with people. It looks like my hashtag is a little bit clouded because of this light in the background, but actually let me try to fix that. Okay, so let's see. I graduated Lisle High School right here in town. I still live in my same town. In 1994, I was a wrestler. I loved wrestling. It was one of the most important things to me. I had lofty aspirations, and those didn't really come to fruition. I was involved in a motorcycle accident when I was 15, and those were some setbacks. I still managed to be an all-state wrestler. I took third in the state of Illinois my senior year and had some scholarship offers to the University of Indiana and Michigan State to continue my career. But in the meantime, what had happened was that I had become friends with a kid in school, and his family had owned a crane rental company that they had started in late 1980s, I think. I'd like to mention their names and stuff because they were so great to me and wonderful, and it guided me in my life as a person, and so personally and professionally. And so I'm forever grateful to them for those influences and for them allowing me to be myself in while I learned the trade. So what happened is this friend had a RM 125 Suzuki motorcycle, and I had a KX 250, and he was in fact much more detailed in his maintenance. I was a little bit more of a ride it hard and put it away wet type, and so I learned some things from this guy. He taught me basic maintenance. He would replace reed valves and clean carburetors and stuff like that I wasn't really interested in unless it was broken. So we would take those motorcycles to the shop where they had a couple of cranes. They were a new company, and when we would do that, we realized that some of the operators would have coolers with beer that they would save for after work, and they'd sit around a picnic table and they'd drink beer and tell stories, and that's a lot what this is those stories I think get lost over time, and so I want to tell some stories, and I'm trying to attract other people to this little platform to tell some stories with me. I'd like to hear these experiences of different job sites around the country, but more particularly local. I hope to meet people through this platform that can tell me their experiences in different jobs and what it's like nationwide and globally one day. I'd like to have those conversations with people. But so this is mine. One of mine. I have many stories that I think are particularly interesting. I didn't have the typical route getting into Local 150 and becoming an operator. So I was working on these motorcycles, and basically we were 15 years old, and all we really cared about was, meeting girls and seeing if we could steal a beer here or there. And in the process, I learned a little bit about cranes, and some of the guys would make us wash the windows on their machines or clean the tires, armor all their tires. They had an incredible maintenance program on their equipment, and so I learned a couple things, and I was probably 15 or 16 years old when that was going on. And so it kind of put it in the back of my head right then that was a career that I was thinking about. Some of my complaints about the school district at the time were there was plenty of jobs like operating engineer, iron worker, plumber, carpenter, all kinds of trades where people could make a good life and a good career. And those things weren't really communicated to us through our guidance programs at those schools. I'm not blaming anybody, but that's why I've helped to create a scholarship for the trades in the name of Ralph King, our shop teacher at the time, and I'm trying to promote some growth in the trades. We're struggling looking for people these days to get involved in these jobs, and that's good for us because it makes the demand more, and our wages often get increased during these collective bargaining agreements. So I'm 100% about the collective bargaining agreement, and I think that it creates a good mark for both union and non-union to have better wages, and I think that's important for all of us. So I'll try to get back on track. So we'd fix these motorcycles, we'd ride these motorcycles, and the time came where I was wrestling in junior college. I decided to stay home, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I'd given up on some of those dreams and decided that I was going to be a crane operator. And so I applied for Local 150's apprenticeship program and bugged the heck out of the owner of this business. Basically, whenever I saw him, I was asking him for a job from the time I was 18 until I finally got that job when I was 23 years old, I think. And during that process, I had put in an application for Local 150, and it didn't come through. And somebody had asked me, "Oh, did you get called out for the apprenticeship program?" And I was upset that my name wasn't on that list. And so I was like, "Well, I'm going to go down to the training program and see what the deal was. If I needed to update my application in a way, because I wanted to make sure I was on that list next." Well, as I went into this facility in Plainfield, which was really just cornfields and a couple barns and a bunch of equipment around there, and some old timers that were teaching people how to learn the trade and the skills. And I went in, and there was about 60 people standing in the foyer, in the entranceway, and I started asking them questions. Well, these were all the apprentices, and the way my mind worked at the time, which some people would think is deceptive, but I was like, forget this, I'm going to stay in this group. So I stood there with those 60 people. I became 61, and the instructors came out, and they were in no way aware that I was any different than anybody else that was there. Why would somebody who wasn't called be standing in this group? So ultimately, I stood in that group for about 6 weeks and followed them around, and they put me in equipment. They put me in skid steers. I could be getting myself in trouble with my local for this. This is a story that I've told people individually, but never quite publicly like this. So to my president, my business manager, my business agents, I'm not going to name any names and stuff. Please don't hold this against me. I love my career, and I don't want it affected by this story, but this is the truth. This is how I got into Local 150. And I followed that group around. And 6 weeks went by before they finally caught up with me to the fact that I was not a first-year apprentice, and I, in fact, was an imposter. So during that time, they had given us study material to study for your commercial driver's license. And this was on a Saturday, was the first day. And that Saturday, they told us to study this book and go to the DMV and take the driver's license written test and come back when we had it done and let them know that we had a permit. Well, I did that. I was rough framing carpentry out in Naperville, Illinois, and Plainfield, Illinois, when all those farms were being turned into residential homes. And I did it for a summer job sometimes during high school, and it continued for a year after. And it was hot. It was the year everybody was dying. It was the heat index was like 120, and they had to put people in semi-truck coolants because the morgues were full. And so it was a miserable time, and I wanted a different career, and I figured this was the right path. So I took that written test, and I passed my CDL after 4 days of studying, and I brought the paperwork back to the people at Local 150, and they were all impressed that I had done this so fast. And now I kind of got fast forwarded on this track, and they started putting me in some trucks and driving trucks around these fields and stuff. And I'd like to mention their names. Some of you guys probably know who he is. He did a lot of training to a lot of our members down there, and he's got great stories too. If anybody ever wants to tell stories about that man, he really changed my life, and I'm forever grateful. I don't believe he's with us anymore. But in the end, I ended up with a commercial driver's license. So I now was able to legally drive tractor trailers, and really I didn't know how to drive. I knew the ins and outs, but I had no real experience. So I left that facility after they busted me, afraid that I was going to be blackballed from the union for the rest of my life, and very scared because I knew that that's what I wanted to be, and I was very, very concerned as a 18 or 19-year-old that I had forever blackballed myself from the career that I dreamed of having as a crane operator. But I walked out of there, and that guy said to me, when I asked him if I was going to be blackballed, he said, "I'll tell you what, you're one of the most ambitious kids I've ever seen. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more from you." He's like, "Don't quit, don't give up. You go take that CDL, you get yourself a job." And he's like, "And you learn how to work hard, and you learn how to drive a truck." And he's like, "And you keep pushing, and I promise you'll get what you want out of it in the long run." And I did. I did that. Miss Winz, as part of those kinks, any way you can make that mic hotter? What does hotter mean? Louder? Do I need to turn this up? I'm just reading some comments. Sorry. So, where was I? Tell me if the mic's better there, Josh. I hope it is. I'm really working out kinks, so I'll put it a little closer to my face even. So anyways, I left there with a commercial driver's license, and what I did is I walked out of that thing. I had quit my job almost immediately as a carpenter, which my father told me never to do. He said, "You don't ever quit a job unless you have a job," but I defied him, and walked into a place in Downers Grove called Community Asphalt Paving. And I don't see those guys very much anymore, but walked in, told them that I had a commercial driver's license and that I'd work hard, and they put me in a 6-wheel dump truck and started having me drive that thing with a trailer around their parking lot. Taught me how to drive a truck, really. 13-speed Eaton Fuller, if I remember correctly. And I spent about a year working with them, and then I bounced around to some other concrete companies and did some work like that, all knowing the whole time that I wanted to become a Local 150 operator. So I'd keep sending my applications in to Local 150, and I'd keep collecting business cards from any business agent there is. So I would not go away. And I ended up in a position, and this is where the story gets kind of interesting, and part of who I am with why I believe in regulations and why I believe in licensing in our industry is, so now I'm 19 years old, I got a commercial driver's license, and there was a company set up in a parking lot giving a roofing display with a boom truck. A boom truck is like it's basically a crane, but it's on a flatbed, and it's smaller, but this one had 100-foot of boom in it. And I stepped up and started talking to the guy, and I did some lying. You know, I exaggerated my experience and told them that I knew more about cranes than I did, and they brought me in for an interview, and I probably interviewed well, and in the process, again, wasn't completely honest about that. So, sorry, I'm getting notifications that are distracting me. So I ended up getting that job. And I thought that I could make my way through it, right? Some of you people who aren't operators aren't going to understand some of the language. I'll try to briefly inform you what it is. But so it's a telescopic boom. Basically, one lever, you push it out, and it goes to a certain distance. I'm like, I can make this happen. You know, I can pick some things up and put some things down. Well, the first job that I was scheduled to do was to go down, and it was somewhere off of State Street, north of Roosevelt. And the building was a 10-story building, and the main boom on this thing, the telescopic portion of it, wasn't tall enough to reach it. And they had said to me, they're like, "Oh, well, do you know how to install a jib?" And I didn't know what a jib was, but I did what I always did, said yes, and then I'd figure it out. Well, installing a jib can be complicated, and if you do it wrong, it can be real dangerous, and you can really make some mistakes fast. And I started to look, and I was like, how am I going to do this? So I'm at this non-union roofing company up in Arlington Heights, I believe it was, just outside of O'Hare, and there's a union shop about 5 buildings up the way. So I sat in that parking lot waiting for everybody to leave, because I had told them that I knew how to run this crane, and I had to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning to be down in the city to set this thing up and install this jib. And there was no internet, there was no YouTube to study and learn what this stuff was. I had to go and get the instruction manual and sit there and try to read through it and figure out how to do this as a 19-year-old punk that had no business being in that situation. And it was dangerous, and I wouldn't recommend any kids that are that are going to listen to this to go about doing it this way. That this world doesn't exist anymore. And I waited for them all to leave, and I pulled that crane out into the little industrial park street, and I started to pull cable off this boom. And basically, I don't know if you've ever messed up fishing line on a fishing pole, but imagine that if the cable is 9/16 of an inch and wire rope, and it can be a mess and it can be difficult. And I was about to embark on that kind of a mess when all of a sudden this guy on this motorcycle pulled out of the union shop down the street, and he was cool, man. Like, he had this long black hair, big mustache, wore denim shirts, pulled up on this motorcycle, and I wasn't sure if that guy was there to kick my ass because I was non-union or what it was, but he pulled up on that motorcycle, he put the kickstand down, and he leaned back on the back of his little box and just started watching me try to figure out this crane. And I was nervous enough to begin with, but now I got this guy watching me. Well, eventually he gets up. Well, actually, what he did is he sat there and he went to his toolbox, his box on the back of his bike, and opened it up and grabbed a beer out of it and sat there and watched me drinking an old style. And I'm like, oh man, what's this guy doing? He finished his beer, he put on his hard hat, and he came over with a 2-pound little hammer that was in his hard box. And he's like, what the hell are you doing, kid? And he did not look like the type of a man that you lied to. So I told him the truth. I told him that I had basically bullshitted my way into this predicament, and I had to swing this jib, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to do it, and I explained the job and told him where I had to go. And he kind of shook his head and was like, well, let me show you what I know. And his name was Harley Charlie, and this is the day I met Harley Charlie. And he helped me pull the cable out and taught me some things about crane signals, taught me how to put those pins in and swing that jib with the rope, and that I should have the confidence to grab somebody there and tell them to help me swing that jib around, and how to put the rope over the sheaves and make sure that you hit these pins, and to break these pallets, to break these things down to a proper weight. There was no computer on this boom truck, and he taught me for about an hour. Thankfully it was summer and we had a lot of daylight, and he taught me how to swing the jib on that crane. And he said, well, now you got to take that crane, you got to go down there in the morning and try not to kill anybody. You know, he's like, before you do that, I'm going to watch you, we're going to put this thing away. And we put it away, and I put it away, and he's like, there's a bar around the street called Paps. Come over there and meet me, and I'm going to buy you a beer. I didn't have the heart to tell him I wasn't 21, but I went over there anyways, and I walked in the door pretty scared about walking into a bar. He called me over to a group of guys that sat there and told me the situation, making fun of me, laughing at me about this little non-union kid that got himself into this. And he said, go do that job, don't kill anybody, do it safe, and come back and meet us here tomorrow and tell us how it went. And I went to the job, I took some pictures of it. I still own those pictures from the first day that I ever ran a crane and the first day I ever had to swing a jib. And I went back and I met those guys at the bar, and I basically sat there at that bar with them before I was 21, listening to stories about how to run a crane, pretending that I liked beer because I didn't want to miss an opportunity to hear all the knowledge that those guys put on me for that entire year that I sat there. So yeah, man, Harley Charlie, I'll forever be grateful and thankful to this man. I was a non-union guy, and he could have turned away and hated me and created that separation, and he did not do that. He took me in, and he made me a friend, and he made me a co-worker, and he taught me so many things sitting at that bar that you couldn't learn in years of on-the-job stuff. I learned so much from him at that time, and he encouraged me all the time. If you know people who are in the operators and that's what you want, you bug them. And so that's when my relationship with Local 150 started. I would, in actuality, call. They were just starting, if I understand correctly, some City of Chicago licensing programs. And so you had to have a license to operate in the city, but there wasn't enough people, inspectors, checking on that kind of stuff. And so this is why I believe in regulating construction industries in this way, is because I went down there that day. I had no license. It was my first day. I could have flipped that crane over right onto State Street, and all because I told somebody that I could do something that I wasn't experienced enough to actually do. And Charlie saved me from those disasters. And I would start calling the union on myself. I got a business card from one of the agents. I'd love to mention their name. They were huge portions of my life. There was about 3 of them. And if they were the type to give me a card that had their phone number on it, boy, they remembered me, because I would call you. I'd call you and call you and call you. Get me in, get me in, get me in. And I started calling Local 150's dispatch office every time that I was scheduled to go down to the city, and I'd tell them the address, and I'd say, there's going to be a unlicensed crane operator at this job site. You need to get somebody out there and make sure he is operating safely. And I'd show up to the job with the crane, and so would the City of Chicago inspector. And eventually they got to the point that they were like, how come you're the only one that we're ever getting calls on? And I'm like, I don't know. Give me a license. I don't know. Put me in the union. Get me into Local 150. Get me into Local 150. And I did this for 4 years, I think, from 1995 until I got in 2000 about. And so they knew me. I was as persistent as you can get. If there's the definition of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, I was it. And it took a while to get the grease. And people kept turning me away and telling me I can't, and you're not going to make it, and be happy with the job that I have, which was a good job. I think I was making $22 an hour in 1994, 1995, running a boom truck. Maybe it was $17 an hour. But I had a commercial driver's license, and I showed up to work, and I busted my ass. And so I continued down that road for a long time. And then I would show up to anybody who had a crane, any shop, and I'd put in a resume. Man, if you had a crane parked on the side of the road, I'd write my name and number on a McDonald's bag and stuff it in the window so they'd see my number and try to call me to give me a job at some point. So I did this for a while, and years went on, and I bugged, and I would show up back to the people who owned that company and that I grew up with, and I'd bug him. Can I get a job? Can I get a job? Can I get a job? And I'd get fired from these jobs for trying to sign the union up. So I went through multiple roofing company jobs. When I lost touch of Harley Charlie at that time, cell phones weren't prominent. Maybe we had pagers or something like that, but we didn't keep in touch that way. And we lost touch for a long time. But I remembered what he said. You just keep trying to get in the union. You bug anybody you can. He said, I was non-union in Florida as well. He's like, and getting in the union was the best thing that ever happened to me. He's like, I love Local 150, and he's like, I think you'll be great too. And during that time, I went to his house a couple times. He had an old Model A or a Model T or something that he would work on. He had a 69 Panhead that I almost bought from him. I really wish I would have. I knew the guy very little, but he had such an impact on my life as a journeyman who grabbed someone who wasn't even an apprentice and taught him how to do the trade, to respect the trade, to treat your coworkers, to treat your customers. It was a monumental moment in my life, man. And I've probably said it again. I cannot reiterate enough. It changed my life. So Charlie, so then I continued on, and then one day I was non-union, and I ended up in the right place at the right time. My heart was broken. I had just bought a house. I had just been fired for trying to organize the union in the shop that I was at, and I didn't know what to do. Now I was out of a job. I was 23 years old and a homeowner and scared to death. And I walked into that person's office, and she was not having a great day that day. And she was mad at somebody on the phone. And I was like, great, this is not what I needed today. I need the stars to align. And I had been also going to Local 150 and signing up on their out of work list. There's an out of work permit list if you were non-union at the time that is organized by, I believe, the Department of Labor. And so I would, every Wednesday from 9 to 12 a.m. or something, or every third Wednesday, you could put your name on this list and pay $15. So I started doing that. I'd put my name on that list, and I'd pay, and I'd pay, and I'd go in there all the time. And this day that I walked into this person's office, and I had been in there multiple times, and she happened to have been looking for a crane operator at that time, and the union hall was empty. And she's like, I got this non-union kid in here. He's bugging me for a job for years. She's like, I'm half tempted to put him to work if you guys can't give me somebody. And things were busy. And so the guy that was on the phone happened to be one of the people I had been calling and bugging about getting into the union for all those years. So the stars did align. And she told him my name, and they brought me down to that union hall. And because I was on that list, and I was at the top of the list because I had been paying for, I believe it was 53 some months in a row. I had paid $15. I still have the receipts from those days when I would go in and I'd pay that, because I wasn't going to lose those receipts. I wanted to make sure I had them if the opportunity ever came up. And I did, and so that day I ended up getting a permit to get into Local 150. And it was one of the best moments in my life. And so I'm very, very grateful to all the business agents, the owners of those companies, Harley, Charlie, all these people that helped me achieve a dream. You know, it was a dream. I can't even tell you how bad I wanted to be a crane operator and run some of these large cranes that I run today. And that's how it happened. You know, some people look, and once you're union, they're like, oh, this is some union guy. Hey man, I'm union because I saw the other side. Because I would work 50 hours or 40 hours up until Thursday, and then have the owner tell me that there was no work for me on Friday, and then not want to pay me overtime, and then want to bank the hours and run it into the next check, and not pay not pay this and not pay that, and no health insurance and none of that stuff. And I needed it. I was a motorcycle rider. You know, I was gonna hurt myself, and I needed insurance. And the avenue to get that was joining the union, and the avenue to learn through our apprenticeship and skill improvement program was monumental. So once I got into the union, then I really started to use that training site. I didn't have to hide that I was there anymore. And I went and I got licenses upon licenses, everything that they offered, classes. Man, I ended up earning a labor award scholarship because of some classes I took. And I ended up getting a certificate from the University of Illinois in Global Labor Studies because of that. And so I understand some things about grievances and grievance procedures. And those moments, those times in my life from 19 to 23 years old, they were scary, they were hard, but I just kept going. I kept plugging along for as many times as I would get knocked down and told that you'll never get it, you'll never get in the union, these things aren't going to happen, you're not going to see those things. I kept striving and driving to get to those things, and you know, and I finally got there. And it wasn't just because of me. There were major players, major people in my life that I owe a lifetime of gratitude to, because I wouldn't have done it without them. And I wouldn't be sitting here being able to even afford some of this equipment, because I'll tell you what, I'm able to contribute to commerce and the economy during times like this because I know that I have a retirement coming. I know that I have health care. I know that there's things that I have that I wouldn't have if I wouldn't have made some of those decisions back then. So I'm eternally grateful. You guys know who you are. I'll never forget you. And if you want me to mention your names in these little videos telling my stories, I'll never have anything but good things to say about you, because you're family to me. You know, you guys made me in so many ways who I am. You taught me how to work. You taught me crane maintenance. You taught me the importance of so many things. Safety. Man, thank you guys. Thank that company. Thanks Local 150, and thank you Lyle for electing me, because a lot of this stuff led to that. I started to learn things about legislation and about law and how it affects different avenues of our life and how we should participate in our local government and how we should do all these things. So many of these things have led me to where I am today, and talking to you guys on this video. So thanks for listening. I know it's kind of silly, but it's important to me, as I am a public and locally elected official, that people know who I am. That it's not a there's no trying to hide anything here to become elected. If people think that I should have this spot, they'll re-elect me if they like what I'm doing. If they don't, they'll elect somebody else, and I will keep, just like I did to get into this union, I will keep working for Lyle just as hard as I work to be a good union member, to be a good employee for these companies, because these two entities, they work together. It's the image of labor shaking management's hand. There's some times where we have controversies between it, but labor can't survive without companies out there getting the business done. So we support these companies. We want to see them grow, especially in these hard times. I'm here for you, all you crane rental barns. I hope you're doing well out there. These times can be tough. And I'd also like to do a little call out to some other operating engineers. I'm going to share this on some of our pages. I hope you listen, and I hope you're inspired to maybe tell your stories. I got a whole bunch more, but it'd be more fun to tell them if I had somebody sitting here. I could get another microphone, and we could do a little segment. I want to record some history of Chicago construction, Chicago labor, how we built one of the most beautiful skylines in the city, in the world, frankly. And yeah, so please reach out to me, private messenger. I've already reached out to a couple people who I know have great stories. There's some more stories about Harley Charlie. I got a friend, Richard Kronberg, who I've talked to. He's an artist. He's an author. He's a retired operating engineer. He's a friend, and he's currently paying close attention to these stay-at-home orders, because I believe he's got some potential compromises with his immune system. So we've got to be real careful with that. But I look forward to talking to him and documenting some of this stuff for our union, for Chicago, for our country, of what happened. We've got this beautiful system of recording and doing these videos and stuff, and so much of our history has been lost because people pass away and the stories only get shared so many times. So I'm going to try to record some of those stories, and maybe 100 years from now, somebody like myself who fell in love with the industry, who fell in love and appreciated the union and the local and the people who make it what it is today, will have a little reference to hear some stories about Chicago construction at the turn of the century and through global pandemics, and there'll be a little documentation where they wouldn't before. So thank you guys. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to. I didn't. Oh, Tony wants. Yeah, let me do a little bit. Let me look at some of these comments here. I'd love to talk to you, Tony. Is it really similar? I remember seeing you when you were young in there, man. We're not so young anymore. How active you became. I'd love to hear your story, man. Absolutely, 100%. Maybe you can give me a call. You can either call in. This new device that I have takes Bluetooth, so if you want to have a video image, I'm learning how to share those screens, to do 2 screens. I also can take phone calls. I can hardline you in, I can Bluetooth you in if you don't want to have your image up there. But I look forward to it. Man, there's some awesome cranes. Some of the biggest cranes in the world are going to be in the city of Chicago coming up in the next year or so. And I've reached out to somebody who I believe is going to be one of the operators of that. I'd like to be one of the operators on some of that stuff. Those are hard jobs to come by, and you got to be good. You got to have a particular skill set. And I'd like to talk to some of those high-rise construction workers. I believe we have an operator who published a photo book from his experience on Trump Tower, and I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to push his book. It's a great coffee table book. So if you guys want to reach out to me, maybe we can sit down and you guys can tell me some real stories, because even though I've been in for 20 years, it's nothing compared to some of the stuff that happened before me. And I love the history of my union. I thank all the people who came before me that made it so great and have given me the opportunity to be a part of it. And that's what part of this is I want to leave a legacy for the next generation to know that there's something good out there and something safe. So tune in. We'll do a little bit more. And if you want to share these videos with some of the other crane pages around the country and stuff, maybe we can get some people. I'd like to hear how San Francisco was built, some of those bridges. You know, we have some amazing infrastructure in this country. We need to build new infrastructure in this country. But man, I would love to hear some stories from people like that and develop relationships. Maybe I could even pack this stuff up and come out to you and have that conversation sometime. So again, that was it. Thank you very much. I'm going to get out of here, and I believe there's still a little bit of sunlight out there. So you know, let's work for a bright future. Let's keep building and growing this economy. And if anybody, also too, I'm a jobs guy, man. I want to help you. If you're out there, if you happen to see this and you're interested in the trade, if you're interested in any of the trades, iron workers or whatever, I can do my best to help set you in the right direction. I want people to love it the way that I do. I want to share my experiences, and if I can help you get a job that can help you provide for a family and give you a home and give you a wonderful life in this great nation of ours, I think you can do that through Local 150 and through some of our other locals in the area. So, man, thank you guys very much. I'm going to kind of sign us out slow and read some of these comments. All right? And everybody have a blessed day. Love you. Be careful out there. And we're coming out of this COVID thing. And we are, whether we like it or not, because of this technology and because of this pandemic, we are a transitional moment in history. And people are going to look back at us like we've been looking at the Spanish flu and those large-scale events that happened around the world 100 years ago. So keep it up. Love you guys. Take care.